Hey everyone, Sakura Yasin here, and today I'm joined with
Bye. Bye.
by joined by Flavia
Hi.
and Bob Bag,
I
and we're going to be talking about a bunch of different stuff, but mainly focusing on the topic of what does it take to be an artist? Because this is something I've kind of been encountering quite often lately. Is just people who seem to not really know or have a sense of what really is required to become a professional artist, and maybe they kind of know that it's hard but not really sure what to work on. So thought we could talk about that. But first, it's been a while since we had Bob on. So Bob, what have you been up to?
uh art for the most part, but also I think I this was mentioned in a previous stream way back when, but I've started sword fighting, and that's been really fun.
Oh,
Yeah.
so what have you learned from sword fighting?
I think I should explain what kind of sword fighting I've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
There's the sport type of sword fighting, where it's like the Olympic fencing with like the stringy rapier stuff, and that's not the type of sword fighting that I've learned. For all intents and purposes, the sword fighting that people used to kill each other on battlefields or for one-on-one duels using real rapiers, which are actually very dangerous, as I've started to learn. It's especially since I've seen what an actual rapier is. It's quite heavy, very strong, made specifically to penetrate you so you die. So that's a rapier. But I started learning about German longsword, which is sort of like the traditional knightly swords. I
Okay.
had a little bit of rapier, but only for the introduction stuff. But mostly right now, my focus has been sword and buckler, which is sort of like a broadsword and a small shield. And it's been quite fun, but mostly because I'm not really used to being physical. Like I've always been more of a shut-in, not really doing anything, just staying in front of the computer. So getting exercise that isn't just for going to the gym, it's quite good because I remember all the times when I go into the gym, it's just boring. You're just running on a treadmill, lifting weights, and it's not fun at all. But being in a martial setting where you're actually interacting with other people and beating the snot out of each other once when you actually start sparring, it's quite fun. It's very stimulating. And once when you start getting good with a sword, it's I don't know. It's just good to start being familiar with something. And I never really realized how important it was to sort of get in tune with your body, because before I'd just be drawing, and I'd just be sitting there all day, and I just sort of rely on my intuitive or my subconscious or my innate ability to draw, but I never really understood what makes me learn. Whereas going to a martial setting, because there's a lot of instructors, and they, especially competent instructors, people who actually prove their worth, they encounter a lot of people. So then they go like, okay, is this person an auditory learner? Is this person who learns by reading? Is this a person who learns visually? Or is this a person that learns kinetically? And I learned that one, I'm a visual learner, so I have a lot of difficulty listening and reading things. But when I watch somebody do something, it's just like, oh, okay, I seem to get it a lot more. And I also learned that I'm a kinetic learner, so I learn things by feeling things through my body. And I remember in some of the earliest streams that I did with Sakura, I mentioned that oh, it's just maybe you should feel out the textures of some things, and then you can transfer that into your drawing, or feel out the rock, or feel out the trees and stuff like that. And I never really understood where that came from until I realized, oh, I feel things kinetically, and I also am more in tune with visual stuff. And once when I went to a martial arts class or just anything doing that was physical, I guess, I realized that's what it is, and it's just like, oh, that's an entirely different avenue. It's like you can find out more about how your body works, how your brain works by doing something physical instead of just trying to draw stuff. And I guess that's really started cementing the idea that like everything, the way you learn is very much interconnected. It's not just mental; it's also physical as well. And it really feels like that. I mentioned in my previous stuff that it's like you learn things, you got to build up muscle memory and stuff like that. And I realized, oh, that's physical as well. You know, it's not just mental. And it's also a part of I think learning, especially when you put yourself in a situation where it's like a new thing. Because in art, you're mostly learning through mental, visual, and basically the muscles in your arm. And while you can get some information about yourself that way, putting yourself in another situation where you're using not just your mind, but your arm, but your whole body, it kind of makes you find out more about just how your biology works. And yeah, and I feel as though like there's a lot of psychological and biological things when it comes to art and learning, and because you're just stuck inside your room all day, you don't necessarily explore all the aspects of yourself when it comes to learning and applying yourself to things, or even psychological stuff like discipline or what it takes to test yourself, that kind of stuff.
Okay. So would you say that the more you learn about sword fighting, the more rapier you get?
Kinda. But yeah, I don't know. It's I would say it's definitely informing me about just like how do I deal with learning, you know, and just like if you apply yourself to certain situations, you get different stimulus, and then that sort of reveals how you receive those stimulus, how you process that kind of stimulus.
Right.
Just,
So
you know,
if you were, let's say you wanted to learn anatomy, you would try to find a way that you could utilize your kinetic learning and your visual learning.
yeah, definitely. Because like when it comes to martial arts, you're using your body in different ways, and you're also finding out the limits of your body. Like there are times you have to have proper stance, because if you have improper stance, one, you're going to get hit, you're going to get off balance, or your muscles is going to start to protest. Once when I started thinking about just how the human body works, it's sort of like I can start understanding which muscles was used for what. And it feels as though it's adding more to my visual library in the fact that I can draw things more properly. It's sort of like if I draw things about balance now, I'm more aware of it. And that sort of gets added to my repertoire, I suppose.
That's useful.
Yeah. Sounds really good.
Oh, and also because I'm exercising more, because of sword fighting, my body is breaking down less. So there's something to keep in mind for all you shut-ins out there. If you're having body problems, then maybe you should start exercising. Find something that's fun.
Yeah. I would say that's very good advice. How everything is interconnected and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that's very good. So, I guess moving to that kind of talks about art as well, but moving to the thing I was going to talk about originally. So the way I like to think about life in general is like an RPG. I think I've talked about this before. It's just fun for me to think of it that way. I like thinking of things as stats and percentages, and it's not that this is exactly how it is. It's just so I made some charts and stuff, but it's not that like, well, this is perfect or whatever. It's just like this is just to give it an RPG type of feel. I'm not saying the numbers are absolutely correct or anything like that, but it's more how I think about things. So here's a chart I made when I was thinking about what actually makes a successful artist. And a lot of times we focus on something called talent, which I'm going to go into much further because I think it's its own topic, really. But we think about talent, but we don't really think about ideas or business. And those are pretty important. I would say out of the three, the most important thing are your ideas. Because you could be bad at drawing, but have very good ideas and make crude stick figures. And you've probably seen this with webcomics that aren't really drawn well. But the ideas are really good. And it kind of, it's like, okay, well, it's still compelling. You still want to kind of be in that world. So I feel like ideas are by far maybe not by far, but they are, I think, a very important and underrepresented category, I guess. And then business includes, even like when I think of business, I'm thinking about marketing, networking, but even things like just being a good person or a nice person, like building a reputation so people know, like, oh yeah, this guy's really nice. I'd like to work with them, or I'd like to support them, or something like that. And that's what I think also is really important. So when it comes to artistic ability or talent, I think that's definitely a part of it, of course, but it's actually less important, I feel, than good ideas. And without the business sense, it's quite difficult to succeed. So first of all, do you have anything to add to that? Or
Yeah, I've got a bit of a, I guess, a bit of a different spin on this, because I feel like there are different types of success that one might get. Like, for example, you could get very successful in a very specific way if you have a lot of business sense, a bit of talent, and not that much in terms of ideas. And if you just hustle and whatever that, I don't know what that's called, that attitude where you just peddle your goods and get in everyone's feed, and you are present everywhere and everybody knows you, and even if you don't have that much talent, or if your ideas aren't that good, you're just so present that you become part of the scenery, and then that gets you success. Then I also feel like, on the other hand, I have seen cases where people have, as you said, just good ideas, not that much talent, not that much business sense, but they have kind of a friend, or just they get shown around. So I don't know, in terms of types of success, I suppose it would be, I
guess it depends on the person and their goals.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wasn't really saying like an artist should be an accumulation of this, but more like when I think of the importance of something, like how important is it that I learn my anatomy? And some people think like, well, that's the most important thing. Okay, fine, do that. But they might have no ideas and no business sense.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, you are building something, and maybe they're really focused on building their art skill, but it's like, okay, you're building some of this pie, but not all of the pie, in a way.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I think if you're looking for success among your peers, that anatomy and fundamentals and like respect of your peers, that becomes super important.
Yeah, I agree, because and this is one of the reasons I think it's really important to get outside of a pure artist echo chamber, where you're not just on a forum or on an art community site. Because what tends to happen is when you're what is it?
I experienced this.
Oh,
when I went to HEMA, basically, I brought my sketchbook with me, and gosh, I don't really know if I should say this, but anyways, the point is that there was another artist on the in the HEMA classes, and people really liked her stuff. And for me, when I saw her stuff, it's just like, oh yeah, you're proficient, like you can do things. But for me, I just I saw some flaws with her stuff, and it's just like, okay, I'm technically more able than this person in some areas. But the people there didn't like my stuff as much as hers. And then it just made me realize, just because you're technically better than something, it doesn't necessarily mean the larger audience is going to know. They're just sort of like, because they see whatever they're going to see. And if they think something's good, even though you're more technically proficient in some ways, they might not see it, even though your peers might. And I guess it just depends on what you want to get by.
Yeah. I guess it also, like, okay, so if you were working in a studio and you were sort of just the person who someone tells you what to do and you do it, like, oh, we need you to model a bunch of tiles in 3D or something, and or maybe you're just doing drawing, but it's really someone else's idea, then I guess that director or whoever is coming up with the ideas takes that part out of your pie, like deals with that certain thing. Like, okay, the director will take care of the ideas, you bring the talent. Or you have an agent who handles all your business stuff. It's like, okay, that's another way around it. Like, maybe you have no business sense, but you find
still need some business sense to know that you need an agent.
Exactly. So you need a little bit, but much less than, someone who's going it solo, doing everything themselves.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I feel like that's the hard the hard path to take.
Yeah, and I think what Bob was talking about with the going out in the real world and then people not quite responding the way, or maybe not even seeing your ability the way it really is, but more seeing it from I think the majority of people tend to favor ideas like mainstream majority of people favor ideas, like good ideas. And they're impressed by talent, but a lot of times they can't tell the difference between skill and detail. Like if something's just got tons of detail, they might think that's really well done.
Yeah. For example, for me, since a lot of my stuff was more just drawings and cel shading stuff, they didn't really see past that. Whereas the person I mentioned before, they were doing paintings, and then it's a lot more rendered. So then because their eyes weren't trained like artists usually are, they don't really see past what's there. They don't see past the illusion, and then they just think, oh, that's whatever it is that's there, and because of that, and that's what they're impressed by. They don't see the details or the flaws or that kind of stuff. So then they just end up liking it. And I think that's pretty important to realize. It's sort of like just because you're really good among your peers doesn't necessarily mean that if you go out into the wider world and then you try to peddle your stuff or just say, oh, my stuff is up for sale, just because you're skilled, you might not be all that popular. You might not make that money just because the larger audience, they don't realize how good your stuff is, or maybe they don't get it. And personal taste and subjectivity is really important to factor that in as well. People aren't going to be looking at your stuff and going like, this isn't to my taste, but I think objectively it's this, this, and this. They're just looking at it and they'll be looking for things that tickles their fancy. They're not going to be looking for objectivity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think different people have different uses for art, and I think a lot of the non-artists, and I can sort of think like that as well, because there is art I like that I wouldn't necessarily do myself, and there is art I like that is not that technically impressive, but I like the feel of it, I like the subject matter of it, I might like just how it's done, for example.
I think we've had even cases with students where like Flavia and I both really liked their work, and we really liked it because it was a good idea. And they found it very difficult to believe because their skill was not up to par. So it's like, no, it sucks. You don't really think this. And it's like, no, I really like it. I really like your idea. And it's, it can be very difficult.
Yeah, that should be factored in as well. There's not going to be a lot of people out there that can really see past their skill level, whereas there are going to be people
in art. It's hard to see past the skill if you're dealing, especially with, when I say in art, I mean kind of like more the student level, because there are different levels, but with the student level,
I think on one hand you build your own shares of this pie and you build the slices, but on the other hand you kind of take away from it as well.
What do you mean?
Well, you sort of shoot yourself in the foot as an artist. I've seen this so many times, and I am so guilty of doing it as well. It's like, oh yeah, I don't think this is that good, so maybe I'll stop doing it, or maybe I'll try something else and not really be objective about it and not.
I think in a lot of ways, and this actually turns into a bigger topic that I wasn't quite planning to talk about, but I think it might be good to talk about it, where in hindsight, you often don't have an accurate view of your journey, and when you talk to people, you may not give them good advice. And
Yeah.
a good example of this, I think, is, well, there's two big examples. One are like people who will say they started out drawing anime, specifically Dragon Ball for some reason. It seems to be something very common. I'll talk to lots of artists, and they're all talking about how, oh yeah, I started, drawing Dragon Ball stuff, right? It's very common, especially among guys. With girls, it's often Sailor Moon or something else. I'm sure now, if you talk to younger artists, they'll have very different references. Maybe Steven Universe or something like that. But they'll say like, oh, I was drawing a lot of anime and that was, trash. And then I learned to do something and I got good. And the thing I feel like is, well, even if you're drawing anime or cartoons or something, you're still learning about proportions. You're getting mileage. You're really training. You're having fun. You're engaged in the work. You're exploring compositions and ideas. You may not think you are. You may just think like, no, I'm just trying to make a cool picture of whatever. But it's like, yeah, but that's what you're trying to do even if you're a professional. If you're working on a magic card, you'd just be trying to make a cool picture of whatever the thing is. So I think that gets kind of not respected as much as it should be, because it's like, oh, I was just doing stupid stuff and then I learned. And then I started learning anatomy and learning perspective, and then my stuff got much better. Or I started looking at real life and different artists, and I feel like that's fine. That's good that you learned, and you're starting to learn the foundations, or the fundamentals. But you still don't want to completely disregard that whole, you were having fun, you were copying artists you really liked part of it. So that's one thing that I've noticed a bit. And the other actually comes to money, and it's something that actually I learned from Steven Silver. And he was talking a lot about how you shouldn't, as an artist, undersell yourself. And right now for the past bunch of years, that's been a thing where artists are charging much less than they traditionally did. So you could go on a site and pay like $30 for an artist to do work that might take them 10 hours to do. So they're only getting $3 an hour, and that's considered like, well, you're destroying the marketplace, because if you charge so little, then no one's going to pay extra, and they're just going to go to the cheapest guy. So what we all need to do is charge more. And I kind of understood that, and that made sense. Yeah, okay, if everyone charges more, that would be better. And what I noticed is it doesn't quite work out that way, and I don't actually recommend it. What I would actually recommend in the beginning is take work, even if it's for free or if it's for very little money, because in the beginning, you don't have experience. And if you're just starting out, you need experience. It's kind of like being an intern. You're not getting paid, but if you were doing commissions, for instance, and you were just doing them for free or doing them for like $10 or something, it's like, well, chances are you might not be that good, but you'll get a lot of clients or customers just because people want that price range. It's like, wow, you're really cheap. Okay, I want you because you're cheap. And what happens is then you learn to meet deadlines. You learn how fast you work. You learn how to deal with difficult clients. You get some networking. You build exposure. You build a client base. And then as you get better, you can raise your prices. And usually that seems to be, when I hear from people who are successful, they often did this. They often undercharged and then sort of built up, and then got to the point where it's like, my work costs a lot and it's worth a lot, and I have an audience of people who are willing to pay that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I feel as though at times I hear artists talk about, especially the ones who are successful, they talk about their journey, and at times it can kind of give the feeling of being really inspirational and you can do it and anything is possible. And there's people that say, you know, anything is possible, but they really underestimate the practical side of it. As I'm going along my journey as an artist, it kind of feels as though life is, no matter where you are or at what point you are, it's kind of like a survival thing. You know, it's like, what kind of skills can you pick up to help you survive? And then if you survive well enough, you can start to thrive. You can start to become successful. But that's what it is. It's like you have to realize the mentality to survive in this world, because you need money, you need to eat, you still need a roof over your head unless you want to be homeless. And then that's where real survival comes in. And as I'm sure most people know, real survival is not that easy. But it's about being practical. It's about going like, what do you need right now? Do you have the skill to what it takes to become an actual artist? No? Well, you know, try to figure out ways to overcome that. Try to come up with plans. And being practical and just thinking about survival can really help with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think also there's a thing of, you don't know what you don't know until you get into the thing you are saying you want to be in. So, for instance, let's say you want to make comics. You might think, well, I want to make comics, but I don't know anatomy, I don't know this, or I don't know that. And so you might think, for instance, that anatomy is the most important thing, whereas if you actually started making comics, you might discover, oh, wait, there's a bunch of stuff I never considered. Like, I never considered how do I build an audience. I never considered storytelling. I never considered, what shots are best. What panels, like, how is the viewer going to read this comic? Are the panels making sense? Do they have a good flow to them? You might be more thinking about things like, oh, you know, I'm really working on getting the anatomy of the forearm, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, that's good. It's not nothing, but if you don't do this thing, like let's say you again going to comics, if you don't do that, you're not going to learn all the things you actually need to know, and some of the things you don't need to know. You know, like you might spend a lot of time thinking, well, I'm going to do comics, so I'm going to start with just doing a lot of still lives, and then maybe you don't actually need a lot of still lives.
Yeah, it's about
finding I'm wondering about something, though, because you said earlier that, in the beginning you should start out and do this, do that, undercharge, and get your experience. But what is in the beginning? Because I found that for myself, I had quite a bit of trouble knowing when I was quote unquote ready, or like, when do you stop thinking of yourself as I'm just learning, and when are you starting to think about making stuff or putting yourself out there? Because I feel like a lot of people that I've encountered, that I guess we've encountered, are not really sure of this either. Some of them think they're ready and they're not, and some of them think they're not ready and they are.
I think well, you could be at the stage where you think you're not ready and you are, and then you need someone else to let you know. Yeah. Right? Like you might need to be talking to more than one person about this, and you might also need to respect people's opinion if maybe they're a non-artist and they think you're really good and you think you're really bad, and you know all these artists who are way better than you. Maybe it's not that good to put all your to disregard the person who says you're good, but at the same time that can go either way, because if it's your mom saying you're good, you know, maybe that's not exactly accurate. But the way I would do it is I would find someone who's decent, maybe not the best in the field you want to go to, but decent, like they are working or you're following their work or something, so in your eyes they're pretty good, and look at their standard, and are you at least at that level? And if not, try to do what they're doing until you are, or like make a comic until you're as good as a person you would consider decent. I don't know.
That sounds pretty good.
I wonder how that goes about in practice, though, because I feel like, at least in the setup nowadays, that you have YouTube and there are stars and bling bling and visible people, and there's only a handful of them really, and that's the sources, you know. Because I remember a few years back there was this bigger art community type thing, But I guess because everything's funneled onto YouTube nowadays, it's very like a wheel where you churn out the same images, which are very high level, and then the standard goes up, but it's not really realistic, I feel.
What do you mean by it's not really realistic?
Like, who do you look at? Because, for example, if I keep looking at just people that I see on YouTube posting cool videos and making paintings and being all like artsy and technically proficient and successful and having decent ideas and stuff, that's a really high bar. And if I was thinking like, if I'm starting out and all I'm seeing is, I don't know, just not that he does videos on YouTube, but Craig Mullins. It's like, I'll never think I'm ready. So
I guess if you're trying to be Craig Mullins, but I guess that, to me, that's sort of like, okay, first of all, do you understand the standard at which you're trying to reach? Because if you were someone who's, I guess this would get into, if you're really talented, and again, I'll have to talk about what I mean by that, because that's something that gets very, I guess, it means different things to different people. But if you're very talented, then maybe it is sort of within your grasp to get to that level. And I've seen it. I saw Jamie Jones when he started out, I think he was 15, and he was posting on a forum I would go to, and he was okay. He was like, it was very good for a 15-year-old, but he wasn't like amazing. But then in the span of a few years, he became amazing. And he was, from what I recall, he was doing master studies a lot and really, really paying attention to the old masters. And but he was also picking it up in ways that other people weren't. Like people who were, like, you could say, well, he's really hardworking. That's true. But I would say you could find plenty of people who were probably just as hardworking and weren't having the same results, because it's not only hard work. But I guess that brings it, like, I should just talk about the other charts I made.
Yeah.
So,
that's good.
So I was thinking of what is talent, because a lot of people say, talent doesn't exist, or talent doesn't matter. Some people have said straight up, there is no such thing as talent in art. And I feel like it's something nice to believe. It sounds nice. And I kind of want to believe that there is no talent. Talent doesn't matter. But I started to think of it where, what if there is talent? What is talent? And the way I thought of it was, it seems to be, to me anyway, and obviously I'm fallible, and either of you guys here could can call me out on something that you think is bullshit. But the way I think of it, it's like, it's a combination of three things. And I called them, because I wasn't sure what to call them. There's a bunch of things that came to mind. And so I just gave them a name, but this isn't what I mean. And I'm going to explain what I mean so that it's more clear. So diligence. So by diligence, I mean hard work and willpower, discipline, stamina, like just the ability to do work, to want to do work. If given the option, for instance, between playing video games or drawing, you choose drawing because it's better for you. Stuff like that, I feel, gets under this diligence category. Aptitude, I would say, is stuff you're kind of either born with, or maybe you're very intuitive. You have a creative mind. Maybe you have a photographic memory, or you're suited for art in a way. And we're talking about art here. If we're talking about music, aptitude might be something like you just hear pitch better than some other people, or you can keep on a rhythm naturally. And for myself, with music, I definitely have an aptitude. With art, I have much less of an aptitude. But that's what I mean. Kind of the stuff that could be considered traditionally just talent. Like, oh, this guy's really talented, because they pick up something very quickly. or at least it appears that they pick up something quickly. And then analytic thinking, basically it's kind of like, I guess it would include things like IQ, things like, are you a critical thinker? Are you able to absorb new concepts quickly? Are you good academically? Things like that. Can you study and then absorb information? So if you were looking at someone, you didn't really know what they were in terms of these types, but you see them and they draw and they're kind of at one level. Then they come, you don't see them for a month, and then you see them again and they're at a much higher level. You could then say, well, this person's talented, but it could be any one or any combination of these three things. I feel like it could be that they studied really hard, understood concepts, and they worked, or maybe they just worked their ass off, or maybe it is that, oh, they just their natural ability really was there, and so they improved a lot in a short amount of time. So in that way, I do think talent sort of exists, but I feel like it's a combination of these three things. Okay, so to make it even more video gamey, I made a numbering system where you have between 1 and 10. I feel like if you have any of these three, if you have a score of 1 or 2, maybe 1 or 2, you're probably not going to make it, just because by 1 intelligence, I kind of think of someone who can't tie their shoelaces, can't do anything really, like you're really impaired. With 1 aptitude, maybe you have no mind for art at all. With 1 diligence, it means you don't work at all. So let's just skip the 1 and 2 level. I think if you're capable of watching this video, you have more than 1 or 2 in any of these. But I feel like if the score goes to 10, you need a total score of 18. Again, it's a number I'm just throwing out there. It's not like, oh, I interviewed 1,000 people and came up with this number. It's like, no, I'm just kind of bullshitting and like, well, I kind of think it's about 18 based on, like, I thought about it a lot and I thought, yeah,
but
okay.
18 out of 30.
18 out of 30. So you need an overall score of 18 to have a chance at being a good artist. But you can increase that score. So, because I made the graph. Okay, so I'll just do what I think of myself, kind of. Okay, so in analytic thinking, I'm pretty good. And so I'll give myself a score of, let's just say 8 as a score of analytic thinking. Okay, pretty good with that. And then with aptitude, I guess I don't think I'm good, but if I had to compare to average, which is 5, I would say I'm a bit above average. So I'll give myself a 6 in aptitude. And in terms of diligence, I think I'm maybe not so great, maybe a 4 or 5. So let's just give myself a 4 for diligence. No. So I have a score of 4 diligence and 6 aptitude and 8 analytic thinking. So that's 18. So I made it. Yay. I can be an artist. So I think, like, oh, okay, so that's a viable option. But you could be, you could be less intelligent. And this is very common with artists, or less analytic. Let's say you only have, what is that? That's 3 in analytic thinking. But you might have a huge aptitude. Let's say your aptitude is 7. Okay, so, and let's say you are extremely hardworking. Okay, so let's go full on. Let's just give it a 9, not even a 10. Okay, so now you have 9 in diligence, and you have 7 in aptitude, so that's 16 plus 3 is 19. So you have better odds than I do of being successful. Okay, go ahead. What is it? What are you thinking, Bob?
Huh?
I don't know. You're like, oh man.
I don't know. It just sounds so self-denigrating or something.
Oh,
Like,
really?
Sounds very grim.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like, oh, you have a better chance than me. Oh man, that sounds harsh.
Really? Why?
I don't know, just the way you said it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it sounds pretty grim.
Well, I mean, like, okay, so my point is basically this, that if you have, you need a certain amount of these things, and if you're missing, like, if you can honestly judge yourself, which I don't know if even I'm judging myself well, but let's just say I was, then you should be able to kind of see what you have, and that should give you an idea of what you need. So, for instance, let's say you were average. You had 5 in all of these. This is not good enough to be successful as an artist. You've got a score of 15. You need to increase 1 or more of these by 3 points. So
You need gear.
you need gear. You need to up,
You need modifiers.
to level up. So let's say you were in this situation. So you're just an average person, and you hear something like, well, talent doesn't matter. But you're kind of at the point where it would be very difficult, because it's not easy to be a professional artist. But what you could do is, like, think about, okay, so how does one increase analytic thinking, for instance? Well, critical thinking is really important. So being able to look at ideas and break them down. And if you're someone who is very accepting of what you hear, and you just kind of, oh, I read it in a book, and so I'm going to believe it, that's not very good. What you need is to be like, I read this book, and it says this thing. Okay. I'm going to read another book and see what that has to say. Or I'm going to listen to more people and get more information. And you don't have to be, like, really academically strong to improve in this. It's more a case of learning to seek out multiple sources, learning to be curious. That's a huge one. Just being curious, trying to educate yourself as much as you can, maybe reading more so you get faster at reading, or thinking about things more. So let's say you read a lot of books, and then you got 1 more point in analytic thinking. Okay, good.
No, that's all you get from a lot of books.
It's very hard. I think people said that it's pretty much impossible to change your IQ. I don't know if that's true. I think IQ changes anyway, but
I think interest can enhance either of these 3.
Yeah.
I feel as though
Interest is huge.
Yeah, I feel as though, like, let's say you have an average intelligence, but you have really good traits. Like, you have average intelligence, but you're curious about a lot of things, so you just gather up knowledge, and then just by doing that.
That's a mark of intelligence, though.
Yeah.
Or that's why analytic thinking is not quite big enough. I just didn't want to call it intelligence, because, if I call it intelligence, it'll be a big thing. People will be like, oh, you're saying I'm too stupid.
But I feel like this is a common reaction, that people don't quite understand that art is a very specialized task.
Yeah.
You can't just go about and say you could do anything, even though some people do. You can do anything. It's like, no, not really. You can't. It sounds powerful as a saying, but it's just that. It's just a saying. It's kind of like those motivational quotes.
Yeah.
They don't really mean anything specific, and when you get down to the brass tacks, it's like, no, you can't do anything, and you can't, like, art is not for everyone and anyone.
Just like most things in life.
Yeah, pretty much. But okay, I think analytic thinking or intelligence is about the hardest to increase, but I think diligence is the most important. And the reason is, with diligence, you can increase the other 2 more. So with diligence, it means, like, are you disciplined? So let's say you're not drawing enough. Okay, do you care enough? Do you have enough willpower? If you have enough willpower, and you can realistically look at yourself and say to yourself, like, you know what, I'm drawing maybe 30 minutes every day. That's not going to cut it. I need to move that up by many, many hours to maybe 6 hours. Okay, so I'm going to try to draw for 45 minutes every day for a week, and then I'm going to increase that to an hour, and then an hour and 15 or something. Maybe every week you increase by 15 minutes. Then you could say, you know, in a couple of years, maybe I have some, it's going to be okay, and maybe it's going to take maybe 5 years to become at the level where I need to be, but I have determination and I'm going to do it. Well, that's good. So if you can increase your diligence, let's just give this guy 2 points in diligence. Okay, so now that did it. So already now you have 6 in analytic thinking. We haven't really changed the aptitude. That's at 5. And then diligence is now 7. So I think that adds up to enough points. 11, 18. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I think diligence is the most important, but aptitude is actually the easiest in a way to improve. It can be super hard. For instance, if you're colorblind, that's very hard to increase your sense of color. I think you can to a point, but it's still really difficult. But what you can do is increase your mileage, and that's the biggest increaser of aptitude, I feel. If you have lots of mileage, you can start to form connections that weren't there before and do sort of magical things. A lot of the stuff I can do now and I take for granted, and I'm not even like particularly good, but a lot of the stuff seemed to me, if I saw it as a kid, I would be like, whoa, how can you do that? How do you even know how to do that? It just seems like crazy. But with enough mileage, most of the things that you look at and you think like, wow, that's amazing that that person can do it. It's a ton of mileage. So I guess if I was going to, this is my guess, but it's probably what I think of as Kim Jung-gi. So I think Kim Jung-gi has tons of aptitude. So let's give him a 10 in aptitude. And he draws all the time. So even if it's not stressful or bad for him, we have to give him like full marks for diligence. And intelligence, he seems above average in intelligence, so I'll give him a 6. So there you've got a 26. So this is kind of where you notice things even more. So you've already crossed the threshold of, oh, I'm okay at art. Well, then you enter the world of people who have, 8 points above you. And it's like, shoot. It's like any RPG or any video game where you just meet people. And I was thinking, is there anyone who's a 30? And I thought the closest I could think to a 30, although, I'm just saying it because I don't know if it's true, but just based on anecdotal evidence, would probably be Da Vinci. It seems Leonardo da Vinci would have tons of aptitude, tons of intelligence, and tons of analytic thinking and tons of diligence. So I could imagine he would probably be the max level.
But where do you put, so for example, you, with Kim Jung-gi, where do you place his ability to turn forms in space?
Aptitude.
Would you place that not in
Aptitude?
analytic thinking?
No.
Because I don't think he started with it. I would place it in thinking.
I would put
because it's a learned skill.
It's not necessarily, because you said he could see perspective when he was in kindergarten, and I don't think kindergarten is the right age for analytic thinking to really kick in. It seems like things are much more intuitive if you're at that young of an age.
Nice.
Yeah. Because I'd imagine, unless he was a very specific, disciplined type of character, I wouldn't imagine him as somebody that's sort of like put himself to that sort of task to learn. Because like he'd be too young.
Like, I do think part of it is intelligence. Anyway, like you must have a certain amount of intelligence, but I don't think it was analysis that got him there. But that's just a guess. Maybe it was, and that was kind of whatever. But anyway, that's just my video gamey way of explaining things. And then again, even let's say you have full talent and full everything, you're amazing. well, you still have you need ideas and somewhat of a business sense to be successful still.
So what would Bob be in the?
If we're doing everybody, then you need to also get a turn, Flavia.
But I don't know how to do mine. I don't know.
I can guess yours.
You do us both. You do us both, Sekra.
Yeah, that's not fair. Okay, so with Flavia, I guess I would give you a 9 for intelligence. Aptitude, I would give you probably a 7 or an 8. Maybe an 8. Maybe an 8.
Shit, that's high.
And then for diligence, I guess I would give you a 4.
That's your dump stat, Flavio.
Yeah, that's my super dump stat. I am.
I think, but okay. So in all fairness, and this is my. It's not just an excuse. I have witnessed it. Flavia has a lot of health concerns. That she has a lot of reasons why her energy level is low and she's not able to do as much stuff. So
okay, then let's put this hypothetical. What if she didn't have that stuff?
Then I don't know. Maybe it's a 10. Maybe
I used to be better.
Yeah.
I used to be so much better.
I used to be way more diligent than I am now. Like, my diligence score is what? What did I give myself, a 3 or a 4? I would give myself 4 when I was really working.
But you have more than I do.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, but okay, so before, what was your diligence score? And before
I would say before, my aptitude was probably at a 4, and my diligence was probably at a 8.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That was a period where I was really interested in learning and really passionate and stuff. Mm-hmm. But I didn't have enough mileage. So as I gained mileage, my aptitude really went up. But my diligence kind of went down. But yeah, so wait, what was the score for Flavia anyway? It was like 8, 9. 17 plus 4, 21. Jesus, that's way higher than mine. Yeah. All right, let's do Bob's.
Let's do Bob's. So we can both
this
feel
is
bad.
all bullshit, by the way. I'm just making up numbers. This is nonsense.
No, it's coming from someplace. I
would say your intelligence is above average.
Yay.
So I'll give you a 6.
Yay.
I would say your aptitude is way above average, so I'll give you a 9 for aptitude.
What? Okay, yay.
And diligence, I guess I would have to give you a 3 on diligence.
No, you'd have to give him a 4 because he draws a lot.
True. You draw a lot.
He does draw a lot.
Well, when you were around us, you were drawing a lot.
And I'm taking classes, so yeah.
All right, I'll give you a 6.
Okay.
All right, so 6
21.
plus 9 is 15. Yeah, 21. Oh, so you guys are the same. Okay.
Oh.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's really fun being in the 18 category.
Yeah.
But you're not.
A lot of people, I especially like talking to older people, because they tell me, they wish they were 18. Anyway. All right. So, anyway, that's not the point of this. Is not to dick measuring type stuff. It's
say that as a thing in large.
Yeah, then the colors would need to be different.
Yeah, but it's more like if you can be honest and discover kind of where you fit in. So let's say I was kind of at a 5, at a 7, and then at a 4. So that gives me 16, I think. And then, so what I would do if I was in this situation, I would be honest with myself and like, I'm really not working hard enough and I don't have enough mileage. Okay, so mileage, I kind of thought of this when I started Pointy Chins. It was a realization that I didn't have enough aptitude. I was kind of hardworking at that time, although, not more than the best people. I wasn't a 10. I don't think I've ever been a 10 in any of these. But it would be like, okay, so I need to get mileage. So how do I get mileage? Well, I need to increase my diligence, and then I need to draw a lot, and then just keep my diligence around a 7 for a while, and then boop, after a year I might get one more aptitude, after another year maybe one more, and then okay, now I'm okay, I'm doing fine. I'm in the 21 club, so I can. You know.
But I think that to be able to look at yourself objectively, it takes a lot of kind of an extra bar that I feel like personally I don't have that. Because I don't know how to assess my own ability. Like, am I super bad? Usually I tend to think I'm super bad. But I have seen people who think they're very good even when they're not.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's also comes into just being able to analytically think about something. I mean, I get you have that as well, but for me, it's like just trying to take a look at the competition, I suppose. Just like take a look at the bar, and then just try to suss out where I am in that, and also getting secondhand opinions, because for me, I'm pretty subjective as well.
I remember when I first started, when I first started taking art more seriously, I had this very, like, basically I still have it now, where I thought, like, no, I'm definitely not good enough to be an artist. Like, what? No. And then I kind of gathered my courage and went to a convention to look at the art, and then I kind of saw where the actual level was, and it's like, okay, if this is the level, maybe I could. Maybe I do have a shot, and that kind of stabilized my thinking a bit.
Yeah, but it also depends on what kind of competition you look at, because it's like if you're looking, because sometimes if you're just looking at the highest level, then it's like, oh, that's the competition. It's like, oh no, then of course you're gonna think really bad about yourself.
Yeah, I feel like it's really important to specialize your goals, because if your goals, for myself at the time, I was wondering if I could send my art to have at that convention, like to even send it for, like, are they going to select me, are they not? And then my thoughts were like, oh, definitely not, why bother, why should I do this and whatever, I'm definitely not good enough. So actually researching the goal itself and the quote-unquote competition, because it wasn't a competition, it was just, oh, well, I guess I wouldn't make a fool of myself, maybe. That was my
yeah, I guess it's very hard to judge, but if you seek out an external an advisor, they can kind of help you see, but it usually is that they're also very biased, and they see, because when I see anyone, I kind of can judge them based on my ability, and I don't think I'm that good, so then it's like, well, if I'm not that good, where are they? And that kind of that can be kind of crushing to people who are starting out, but at the same time, I'm learning, I think you do learn just by teaching more and more people kind of the real level, like what is acceptable, because you start to see patterns. You see, like, okay, this person's very
I feel as though getting exposure to a lot of different things, just getting experience, is like not just comparing yourself to yourself and just one other person. It's like, no, take a look at the whole ocean, and that might take a while. I feel as though it's like you can't be hasty in saying, oh, I'm good enough now. It's like, no, you need to take your time, analyze, get experience, suss out where you're at, what you can do, and what other people can do, and what everything basically is. And then once when you have, go ahead.
I was just going to say, there are ways of checking, like entering contests or trying to, like, let's say you're not sure, you're on the fence of whether you're good enough to make money with art, try. Like, if you've got the stomach for it, I personally wouldn't have, but if you are strong enough, you can sort of try to, okay, I'm going to put my work out there and see, I'm going to charge $5 for a piece. Is anyone interested? I'm going to charge $10. Is anyone still interested, or has the interest dried up? You can kind of get a sense of where you are based on things like that as well. And I also think it's really important to, like, Flavia was saying about her experience with a convention. I think it's also really important to understand that wherever you are in a year, it may be completely different. So looking at, I hope this is okay if we do this in post, but I'd like to kind of show some of your earlier pet portraits and then how much they improved in a pretty short time.
Yeah, sure.
And I just want to, the main point is, because I think Flavia improved a ton, but it's kind of an unexpected, like, you can't really plan for these improvement things. It's not like, oh, well, I'm gonna be this good in 4.5 years, and I
Yeah,
tend to
I
give
feel like
myself
that's
goals
totally.
like that, but it doesn't really work that way.
Yeah, I don't think that ever has worked for me either. But what I struggle the most with is, am I good enough for this specific thing? So,
Yeah.
and that even so, I kind of like, I guess, but I don't know really. And with that, you actually helped me a lot because you have a an unbiased view of like, oh, is this good? Is this not? Is this, because I tend to think it's terrible, and when I don't think it's terrible, it's just, oh, I'm not really seeing what is about it.
Yeah, but the point is really like, it doesn't really help to get discouraged and think, I'm
Yeah.
at this level and it's
Yeah.
gonna take me forever to get professional, because that's what you kind
Yeah.
of feel when, like, in the beginning, when you have no understanding of anything, you tend to think it's gonna happen soon. I thought, oh, by age 30 I should be Bugaro level, right? Nonsense.
Bugaro wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah, he would have flicked his booger at me. Uh, and then, what was my point? Yeah. So when you're in the beginning, you kind of have, you believe you can do a lot more than you actually can, in a way, often. I mean, this is, what is it, the Dunning-Kruger effect or something? Where when you lack skill, you actually believe you possess more than you have, and when you have a lot, you underestimate your
Yeah.
abilities. And so I think you're hardest on yourself when you're close to that line of almost being ready to be professional level. It's probably when you feel the furthest from that goal. And so when I see people who are near that level, it's like, just hang in there a bit more. It's not,
Yeah.
It seems horrible. It's kind of like, I made an analogy before about how you're kind of rowing a boat on the ocean trying to get to an island, and you left the coast, and in the beginning you're all excited because you see the coast and it's like, okay, hey, I'm going off on a journey, and then the coast disappears and you feel like, hey, I'm making progress. I used to be at the coast and now I'm further and further away, and then you get so far that the coast disappears over the horizon, and you're like, okay, I'm so far now that I don't even see the coast, and that's kind of scary but also kind of exciting, like, wow, I'm so further than where I was. And then you just keep going and going and going, but then after like years you haven't seen any other coast. You don't know if you're going in the right direction. Your compass tells you you're going in the right direction, but you're not sure. And then you just keep going and going. It's like, wait, there was an island that was supposed to be here. I was supposed to get here. And then you feel scared and lost and like, what am I doing? Do I just keep going? What do I do? What do I do? And then I guess you just keep going, because what else are you going to do? Just keep heading in that direction. Nope. But eventually you get to the despair, where it's like, this isn't going to happen. This isn't going to happen, is it? Shit. What have I done? What have I done? I was at the coast. It was safe. I should have stayed at the coast. I should have stayed at the coast. And then you just maybe even stop paddling a bit and you start moving backwards. It's like, then you get your willpower back. Like, no, I'm gonna do it anyway because I'm gonna die otherwise. And then you see, oh, what's that off in the distance? It's some seagulls. And, oh, you follow them and then you get to the island and then you're there and it's like, oh, sweet, I made it. I'm finally on the island. And then you find out one of the people on the island is a cannibal and he's trying to kill you, and it's like, what the hell? These are new challenges and a whole new journey has opened itself up before me.
It's a new adventure.
And then you got a bunch of new stuff to worry about. But
you know what? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, that's it. That was the end of the story.
Okay. I was just going to say that one thing that I really noticed that's a lot more, and I was surprised to learn this, is just that in sword fighting, because it's just like any other martial art, you can very clearly see what the hierarchy is. And I'm not saying that you don't see that in art as well, but it just feels a lot more apparent, because it's just sort of like, you just know if you go up to this person who's more skilled than you are, he'll just beat you up. And it's like, oh, no worries, you have a lot to learn. Yeah, but it's like, it's a clear, easy set goal. But with art, it's a lot more scary, because it's sort of like, yeah, you don't know a lot of the artists that are better than you personally. you just know that they're better in some sort of strange abstract way, especially if you're not that skilled and your eye hasn't improved. And because of that, the only person you kind of measure against yourself is yourself. And then when the despair sets in, it's sort of like you have no idea and you're lost at sea. And then that's like the uncertainty is what really eats at you.
Yeah.
Whereas in sword fighting, and I guess in any martial art, it's just like, no, it's very clear. It's certainty really takes down the fear, and the uncertainty really brings it up. Is what I see.
I think and in martial arts you also get belts and stuff. Well, I know in
In sword fighting, it's like a silver or blue rank and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think the ranking kind of helps in a way because it gives you something to at least roughly gauge your ability. It's not necessarily true because sometimes you'll find someone who's a black belt and it's like, oh, I thought you were going to be stronger, but okay, never mind. But at the same time, I think this is one of the reasons why people might really be drawn to art school, because you get graded, you get someone to tell you, here, do this, and if you do this, you'll be good or whatever. But the reality is, maybe in a class of 30, maybe 1, 2, or 3 people in art school in a class of 30 will actually be making it. And then the rest will be in sort of, because we got told in our school that it had like a success rate of what, like 90% of the students become, but it's not true. It's like, yeah, you might be in a job, but you might just be an intern, or you might be doing something completely unartistic. Maybe you're in the HR department or something. So it's like, well, it's not the same as, I think in a way it's a false sense of security when you're at an art school.
Yeah, like it happens with martial arts stuff as well, because like there's a lot of gyms or just schools that like they sort of say that they're good and they try to brag about it, but it's just like, yeah, you're not really the real thing. Like the good thing about the sword fighting is that there's actually tournaments where they, it's like they show the medals that they've won. They go up and then they'll say, no, just challenge me if you want to see I'm actually good or not, fight me. And there's that. But with the art school, I think it's a little bit more obscure, unless you're talking about something like what's that school at California again? The one where Feng Zhu and
Art Center.
Art Center. There we go. Yeah. But even then, I heard that that's kind of going down as well.
Well, I've seen a lot of, or I've seen some student work in it. It is very variable. It's like, oh, this person's at this level? Oh, okay. Yeah. And it's kind of surprising.
Yeah.
But you know what I think with these concepts that we've been talking about, especially in the past few minutes, they're very like success, structure, hierarchy, art school. These are very general and very vague. And I was thinking about, like, you mentioned my portraits and stuff, but I found that what it really is helping me is, fine, okay, the piece is whatever, the painting is whatever, but did I capture the expression? It's like, what is my goal in this? What is my interest in this? And more so, it's like, okay, did I capture the expression? Did I capture the feel? And did I make the owner, the person, the client happy? Like, are they recognizing their their cat or dog or whatever in it? Because I feel like these are very verifiable.
Yeah.
And it's very good to have, kind of like in your analogy with the rowing and the ocean. Yes, you don't see the coast anymore, but you look up at the sky and you see the star alignment, and that way you can guide your journey.
Oh shit.
Yeah. I think I definitely made this mistake as well, in that I guess you could call it arrogance, but what I used to think is storytelling is something I can do, and expressions are things I can do well. I've pretty much always been decent, like I would say good at expressions, and so I completely ignored them. And I would only talk to people based on, like, I would talk to other artists and they never would really say, oh, your expressions are good. They would just say, yeah, it's not quite this level or whatever. And I would get pretty discouraged. It wasn't until I started showing people my other stuff that I could do that it started to be more like, oh, this matters. And actually seeing Flavia's work helped me a lot because she's able to capture expressions in cats. And I noticed that's what I was able, like, I really responded to that. Like, wait, but you have the best thing. You have the expression. That's like the story. That's the, you've captured something amazing. And then I realized, like, oh, I probably should have paid more attention to what I do have.
Yeah.
Like storytelling and expressions. And I'm going to try to focus more on storytelling and expression. And I think I am kind of shifting my focus anyway. But yeah. So don't underestimate what you do have is very important as well.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of us keep doing this thing where we're looking like, oh, the grass is always greener. But kind of if you had, let's say, full marks in analytic thinking, but you were only focusing on the fact that, you know, your aptitude's not that high. It's like, no, you've got something to work with.
Yeah.
You've got something to build on.
I think Bob does this all the time.
Yeah, I do. But the thing that I think really helps with this is just like it's just I think mentality is really important. Like if you think about the things that you don't have, and you know, you go to the dick measuring contest stuff, it can get very discouraging at times to realize what you don't have. But for me, I found that it helps to just think of everything. Well, maybe this won't help in everything, but just thinking of things in a survival situation. It's like you need food, you need a roof over your head, you need to survive, you need to be able to get to a point where you can enjoy things. And then when I start thinking about that, I just think about, okay, forget about the stuff I don't have. What do I have that I need to work with? What do I need to get through whatever problem I have? Then when I do that, then kind of becomes easier. It's just thinking about what tools do I have to make that fire? What tools do I have to make that shelter? You know. And when I do that, it's like, oh, it's okay. I have some tools. Yeah, I'm not completely bereft. I am not that homeless dude on the street who doesn't have anything.
Why are you laughing at that person? Jesus. I'm not homeless.
Well, I don't mean to laugh at that person, but...
But anyway, yeah, that's right.
Where you are.
It reminds me a bit of the remember, Bob, the castle?
Yeah.
So, I don't know if I've mentioned this in podcasts. I guess I haven't. So, I was talking to Bob a while back. This is years old. And I mentioned this castle. Basically, there's a castle on a hill, and you want to take it. And there's a king, and he owns that castle. Okay, how are you going to do it? And the point was this. I think of it, again, like an RPG. So let's say you have stats. You have intelligence, dexterity, charisma, whatever. You have your basic, like even just human stats. Let's say you're really strong, and you have a big army. Okay, what are you going to do? Well, okay, you take the castle. You get your army. They get their army. You fight. You hopefully win, and you siege the castle and take it, and then you're the king. Fine. But what if you have you're not really that way, you're a pacifist. Okay, well, what if you're very kind and diplomatic and you have a lot of charisma and you make a lot of friends? Well, maybe you move up politically in the ranks and you learn like, okay, I'm going to kind of talk my way into power and slowly get higher and higher, and maybe you make friends with the king and he likes you so much and he's like, you're the best guy, I don't even care about giving it to my progeny, the thing, you're gonna be the next king, I like you. And then you just become the king. And then maybe
I don't even care about my progeny, I like you.
And then maybe you're someone who's like, oh, you're not charismatic at all. And you don't even have good hygiene. You stink. No one even wants to be near you. Okay, so maybe you don't stink like totally, but you stink quite a lot. Okay, but you're really sneaky, and you have no morals at all. You don't care about...
People smell you if you're really stinky?
I guess. Okay, so let's say you're not super duper stinky, but you have no morals. You don't care. You don't care about playing right or wrong. And... I mean, you could just poison the well and kill all the inhabitants and then just, okay, walk in, take the castle. It's yours now. Or you could, like, go in the sewers and go under, like, secret tunnels and stuff and then assassinate the king somehow in his sleep because you don't care.
Why is the king in the sewers?
No. You have to go up the secret tunnels. They happen to connect to the sewers because the king has a getaway, you know, in case of any kind of disaster.
That's his toilet, right?
Yeah, you have to go up the sewers and then you dodge the falling excrement and like, okay, climb, dodge, and then you get to the king and then you slit his throat and you throw him down the toilet and now you eat the sewer water. I had to drink that. You have to drink it now.
He's so bitter.
Yeah, and so that's it. Or maybe you're just like, you don't have any of that. You're not even good at fighting. You're not good at talking. Well, no, let's say you are good at kind of a type of talking and you're very crafty and you understand business really well. And maybe you just make a business and then buy more and you end up creating a merchant guild and then you get more power that way and you get influential and you can take the castle. And the point is there are tons of ways of taking this thing. So if you're the type of person who thinks, well, I'm not as good at perspective than Scott Robertson or something like that. It's like, yeah, well, you have other things. You have other ways. And it also doesn't help to shit on people who are successful because they did it a way you didn't like. And that's something I used to do when I was much younger is I would look at people and it felt like if they didn't win honorably, it doesn't matter, you know? Like, I really wanted people to be kind of what I thought of as ideal. And when I saw a person who was successful and I saw they were a good person and they were very honorable and, you know, even if it cost them a victory, they would take the defeat in order to save their honor. It would be like, wow, great. You're great. Yeah. I like you. I want you to succeed. Yeah. And when I would see someone who it's like, oh, they're willing to win at any cost, they'll besmirch their reputation or whatever, and yet they still manage to get something. It felt unfair and it felt bad. But eventually I just stopped caring about that. It's like, no. They just have different skills. Everyone's just trying to survive. As Bob said, you're trying to survive and you use what you have, and it would be foolish not to. It would be foolish for the person who is morally bankrupt to not want success because, well, why not? Just use what you've got. I may not agree with it.
I think that this kind of puts a bad spin on using what you've got, you know, because it's like, okay, fine.
That's one option to be morally bankrupt. You don't have to be morally bankrupt.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and then on the other hand, the fact that you're using what you've got doesn't necessarily make you morally bankrupt.
Yeah, of course. But I'm saying,
like, I feel like you're supposed to use what you've got either way, because that's my point. That's my sound of mind.
Exactly. Like you do the best you can with what you have,
but I am still in the honor bound camp.
I guess like I don't think any of us is like saying you have to be completely ruthless. No. Is like yeah.
It's more the opposite. It's if someone's saying you have to be ruthless, and then someone else is like for myself, maybe I think I'm not ruthless. I'm just not that type of person. Does that mean I fail? It's like, no, you can do. There are so many different paths, and I like the idea of RPGs because they have stats like, oh, I have what if I have low strength and I have low constitution and I only have tons of dexterity? It's like, well, no one will be able to touch you. You can just do crowd control, or you could just do a bunch of stuff where no one gets. You could poison them, and they can die slowly. And just there's so many different things that could work. Or if you only have high intelligence, then what? Oh, maybe you'll be a glass cannon, but you can do tons of magic damage. But anyway, I try and think of that for life. Like, okay, so you have this and you don't have that. Well, how can you make what you have work? And I think in terms of increasing the so that talent thing with the analytic thinking, aptitude, and diligence, I think it's actually better to work with a strength than make a weakness stronger. But it's good to make a weak part stronger. I think that's very important and admirable. But I think where you really shine is when you find out what your strengths are and really work with them.
And I think there's a threshold as well, survivable threshold, where you kind of need to get all your, I guess, stats to at least a certain level.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I think it's good for like it's always good to be working on your weaknesses, but it's also when it comes down to it to play on your strengths. Like when
maybe it's
a competition
maybe it's
or
like
something.
yeah, maybe it's like work on your weaknesses to the point where they don't hold you back. Like if your weakness holds you back, then it's sort of like yeah, you need to address that.
Yeah,
And then get it to
of
the
course.
point where it doesn't hold you back.
Yeah.
Because I'd imagine like you could be super intelligent and you know and you have great stamina and you can go on forever, but if your legs are crippled, then you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's true. Something I've noticed with certain people is with this, like to the other graph, the talent, ideas, and business sense. Sometimes what happens is people will see someone who is less talented than them, and they won't see the ideas and they won't see the business sense, and they'll get this impression like, "Oh my God, that guy sucks. I'm better than them. Why are they successful? Why are they? Why are they this? Why are they that? I'm so much better." And it's quite like maybe you're not seeing the other two things, and you're being quite obnoxious.
It encourages bitterness.
Yeah, and also, who would want to hang out with a person like that? Really? I mean, maybe you have a crew of cynical people who are just like super bitter about like, this person doesn't deserve it and I deserve it. It's like maybe that's true, but then why are you not successful if that's the case?
Yeah, I feel like if you're saying that, it's like, yes, then go do it.
Exactly. And yeah.
But on the other hand, I feel like when you're measuring yourself up against someone and you're not really taking into account the difference in backgrounds, like for example, how because I do this all the time, like, oh, I'll look at people and then I'll see, oh, they're working so much more, and I'll completely disregard the fact that I can't move. Or that I can't stand up, or that I'm dizzy, or that my vision is just like all blurry and
Oh no!
it's like, yeah, why am I not doing this? And I'm horrible at resting and taking breaks and stuff, so I just kind of get in my own way, because I suppose if I just took better care of myself, I could do more than what I'm doing. Maybe not as much as they're doing, but I feel like there are two sides to everything we've been saying.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess it's just because there's just so many trade-offs with doing certain things. It's just like, oh, if you do this one way, you gain something, you lose something. You do this one way, you gain something. It just feels though it's sort of like just like with what Psycho said about like taking the castle. It's just like just find out what your playthrough is going to be like. And find out what your type is. It's like, oh, your playthrough is a stealth speed orientated, or you're a brute, like your warrior class or something. Just find that out, and then you'll find that you'll find the trade-offs that is acceptable to you, and then that's when it'll start being fun. Because like if you're meant for a warrior class but you're trying to play the mage, then it's just like, oh, that's not going to be fun times.
Yeah.
The trade-offs aren't going to be worth it.
Although that is really hard to do. Like, although we say, like, just do this, just do that. It's like, it's not as simple as, I mean, that just do it is very difficult, and it might take a while. Like, learning who you are and what your things are, what your strengths are. That can be...
I feel like that's super difficult to accept what you are and what it comes with.
Yeah. But it also is, once you do understand what you are, and you kind of have a good sense of... what the world is. Like, if you stay in too small of an environment, you get a very skewed sense. And I think I've definitely been here where I was very much the art student, not in school or anything, but just online. There is this place where you can, I mean, you hang out in forums, you watch tons of art channels, you're subscribed to many different artists, and you're kind of following a lot of different things, but you're still, if you look at it, you're kind of in the same little zone, and you might be completely missing what is available out there in terms of jobs or even people. Like, you might not even know there are a group of people who might really, really like your work, and you don't even know that entire group exists. And so you're thinking, I have to be like everyone else, and I really want to do this one thing, but there's no market for it. There's no... and I thought this with caricature. I pretty much thought, well, there's caricature. It's something I'm good at. It has expressions, it has faces. I understood this pretty naturally. I improved really quickly at it, but there's no real jobs there. It's not cool. And I just told myself a bunch of things that really stopped me from doing that. And I don't know. Even saying that though, I have to kind of accept that I'm also the type of person who has to learn things the hard way. And
Yeah.
The advantage of that though is at least I know it. At least I'm aware that, all right, I know there's an easy way of doing this. I know I'm not going to do it the easy way.
Yeah.
And then I'm not going to be hating the next 4 years because I know, like, nope, this is who I am. I have to do it the stupid way. I have to figure it out from scratch. I have to understand
Reinvent the
it.
wheel.
But usually, so far anyway, after I do eventually understand the thing that someone may understand much, much faster, I tend to understand it pretty well. So at least there's a trade-off. And I think if you're able to see yourself and accept yourself, then at least one of the things that stops you is gone, which is yourself, because that's usually the biggest thing that stops you from being successful. It's your own doubt, or your own, in some cases, the opposite, where you actually think you're way better than you actually are. Maybe you're too arrogant, or
But sometimes can work. That can sometimes work for you.
Oh, that can often work for you, where you think you're the shit and you don't care because nothing stops you. So what happens is you just keep gaining mileage. You gain tons of mileage.
We were watching that a documentary about Darksiders and Joe Madureira and his crew, and how they just started making a game because they didn't know how hard it was to make a game.
Yeah, I think
and
that's true.
They
for
were
a
just
lot
talking
of
about
things.
how we didn't know how hard it was, so we just kept doing it.
Yeah, being naive can be a huge advantage, and that's what I mean. Like, everything can be an advantage. Everything, almost everything. I think.
I do have one thing I think I can add to that. It's just that, like, even though they were naive, they were all hard and diligent workers. If you're naive and you're not a hard and diligent worker, and you go into, I'm just gonna make a video game,
Yeah,
and then
you're not hard. A
you're
lot of
fucked.
people
Yeah.
who had the right job, like the
Yeah,
programmers
yeah.
were programming, the artists were drawing. It's not like
They
the
were prepared.
artists were the programmers and the.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It feels like with them, it's like they might have been naive, but they were prepared for the job. Like they already had what it takes to get it done.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah.
I think that's the huge thing, and that's something that's so hard is when you listen to videos, like even if you're listening, well, you must be listening because otherwise how can you hear me say this stuff? But I mean, you hear us talking and you might think, okay, so I'm this or whatever, but it's so easy to just listen to someone who's talking to someone they understand and not necessarily you. So what I mean by that is you might have someone who is an industrial designer, and they wanted to be an industrial designer, and they know that world, and that's where they're coming from, and that's who they're talking to, but you don't know that's who they're talking to. And so they might say things like, well, just have fun doing sketching, but it's like, that's because that type of sketching is fun for you, but it might not be fun for someone else. So knowing yourself and knowing where the people talking are coming from also really helps. For instance, if you listen to me talk, you might not get a good idea of what it is to work in the industry and to be in a studio, because I personally don't really want to do that. And so that's not what I cater to in terms of, I don't try to not target those things, but I don't know as much about it, so I'm not talking as much. But if I was in a studio, maybe I would have a very different idea. I would be saying, oh, well, if you want to make a portfolio, you really got to think of the company you want to work for. So which company do you want to work for? But whereas for me, it's like the idea of working for a company is not something I even want to do. It's more like, how can I work for myself? How can I create my own things? So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I suppose I have one more thing to add to the whole idea of acceptance. Once again, this comes to mentality. I think there are some people out there who think like if they just accept who they are, maybe they're resigning themselves to something. But it's like, no, from my experience, I think using acceptance is a practical way of just dealing with things. It's just sort of like, okay, you have this thing, you accept it, okay, get on with it, deal with it, survive, get better, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now, so much of, from what I've seen, success comes down to people just not giving up. Let's say you were someone who had a score of 17, you're 1 away from 18, you could kind of improve, but you decide, I'm not getting anywhere, I'm going to quit. I've seen so many of those, and it's especially true of the people with a very high intelligence. They tend to be the first to drop out. That's why I actually think of intelligence as the lowest of in art anyway. It seems like the lowest of importance in terms of factors, because intelligence often means you're good enough to see how bad you are. And you're good enough to imagine how impossible this is. You're smart enough to imagine how impossible this is. Whereas if you weren't that intelligent and you were just super diligent, you don't even notice you're getting good. You don't even notice that you're doing everything you need to be doing. So life can be much easier in that way.
I don't know if I would put that... I don't know if I would chalk that up to necessarily intelligence, but caution. Because when you're... Let's say you're at the 17 mark, it's a very high risk, but also potentially high reward. But if you're the cautious type, of course you're going to go with a safe bet. And of course you're going to choose the certain over, dreams and,
I guess it depends on the personality.
Yeah.
It's like if you're really intelligent, but you just really like art and you're hardworking, and you're not the type to give up, then it's like you're going to go through.
I was thinking about this as well. It's like, the desperation is really important as well. Like if you desperately need to do art, you will probably figure out a way to make your stats work with whatever they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not something I would ever do, but it is something I've thought of as a thought experiment of just telling students, you can't make it, you can't do it, you're going to fail. And basically the ones who listen were going to fail anyway. Because really, if you're the type of person who someone can tell you you're going to fail and then you fail, you probably you don't have enough strength of character to survive what's coming in art, which is a lot of rejection or a lot of competition. And the type of person who is successful is usually the type who, no matter what you tell them, they're going to do it anyway. They pretty much have no choice. They have to succeed whether they... Because if they don't, they're screwed. And so those people tend to have a very do-or-die mentality. And but at the same time, the reason I don't tell people that is because I also understand people are at different life stages. And just because you may be weak in one part of your life, maybe it's a particularly a period where you're particularly fragile. I think assuming the rest of your life is going to be that way is also a mistake, or that you're just write the person off. They don't matter. It's like it's kind of hard to say because both have their points.
Yeah, I guess maybe like it applies. It depends on what point. Like if you can find out at what point this person's at in their life, then different things will apply to them. Yeah. Like if they're at a point where they're insecure, let's say they have a lot of talent and they have a lot of ability, but they're really insecure. They don't know what to do with their life, and they're weak of character. But they're like, I don't know, a teenager or something. And then just like you see they're teenagers, and then you tell them, quit or something like that, they're probably going to be very discouraged. But if you take a look at the fact that they're young and they're insecure, it's like, okay, let's revisit you when you're like 25. And you go to them when they're 25, and then you see what their character is. Then it's just like, oh, okay, I can tell you this now, or I can't tell you this now, that kind of stuff.
I have a bit of a different view on that hypothetical situation. Because if you see a teenager and they're super insecure, if you just do nothing for them, because usually at this point in your life, if you stumble upon a mentor type who is maybe going to say a one-liner, but that one-liner is going to impact the rest of your years, that's going to make a whole lot of difference. But if you do nothing and nobody else does anything, when they're 25, they're going to be probably worse off.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, because they'd be impressionable at those years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the times, but okay. So I was wondering, what does one do to strengthen each of these slices or stats or whatever? It's like, all right, fine, you've got these problems, and let's assume that somehow you manage to figure out what your stats are, where you're lacking, what you're missing, but how do you improve on each of them?
Well, I think I kind of talked a bit about it already, but I guess I should talk some more. So, the first thing I would think is, okay, focus on aptitude and diligence, because those two will help the other one. So diligence is the most important, I feel, because, okay, if you're doing a lot, you will build your visual library, you'll get more mileage. Like, mileage is super, super important. It's probably the most important thing. It's the thing that separates it from, if you have a lot of intelligence and low mileage, you'll be able to understand all the concepts, but you won't be able to do anything. You'll maybe struggle really hard to do something. If you have high mileage and low intelligence, you might not understand how you're doing it, but you'll probably be able to do it, or at least do a relatively close facsimile of what you're attempting. So then it's like, okay, so this is how I think of it anyway. I need mileage. How do I get mileage? Well, the best way to get mileage is to do stuff a lot. How do you do stuff a lot? Do stuff that you enjoy. Do stuff that doesn't tire you out. Do stuff that you're interested in, that you want to, that you're engaged in. That's why I always suggest, not just because it's practically useful, but it also helps with mileage, to do what you want to do now. Like, you want to make comics, make comics. You want to do animations, do animations. Find a programmer, or find a flip book or something, or even just some sticky, the Post-it notes. Make little animations. Like, do the thing that you say you want to do, because in trying to do it, you'll find out what you need work on. So you might try to do the comic and realize the very first thing, I don't really know what I don't really have an idea. Okay, well, that's the first thing. What are your ideas? And why do you want to do the thing? I guess that's another thing that lately I've seen a lot of people tell me things. I even sometimes get emails where people are like, well, I want to be successful and have tons of followers and have a YouTube channel and take it easy in life and just have fun and have time for video games. It's like, what does this have to do with art? This seems like you want to be famous. And
yeah,
I think there is a way of being famous, but I don't know how to be famous. I got it from, like, whatever fame I had, I just got from doing the things I was gonna do anyway. And I didn't do it to be famous. I feel like doing something to be famous, again, I'm not gonna say it doesn't work, because it does. It's another way of taking over the castle. Like, you could be someone who just does things for maybe hedonistic reasons even. It's very like, I just want to experience nice things. I just want to have a nice life. It's like, okay, but as long as you work really hard because of it, then okay, you'll still get successful. The tricky part is when someone doesn't have, they're lying to themselves in a way. Like, they know they're not hardworking. They know deep down they're probably not smart, and they're not really talented in some ways, but they like to think they are. And then it's like, yeah, but I don't really, I'll just watch some videos because that'll help me, right? It's like, you need to be doing stuff, not just watching videos. I think I made a video last month, I guess, and someone commented, because I was talking, it was how to draw hair, and I was talking a lot about all the things to keep an eye on, and then I had a portion where I was actually drawing, and they're like, oh, the important part is that part where you're drawing. I think that's so incorrect. Like, you usually cannot tell much from when a person is drawing if you're watching them, unless they're very close to your skill level. If someone's close to your skill level and you watch them doing something and maybe they're a bit better, you'll be able to pick up on what they're doing. But if the skill level is very different, watching someone is not going to make you better, because you aren't good enough to know the things that they're actually doing, and you also don't know, like, if you listen to them or you ask them questions, they probably won't tell you the real thing. So I think they did an experiment where a person was playing tennis or golf or something and explaining to people what they were doing, and then they also were taking footage of them with a camera, and they played back the footage, and they saw the footage is very different than what the person was explaining they were doing. And that's because when you get to a certain level, you kind of forget what's muscle memory. You forget how much you actually know, and so when you tell someone what you're doing, you tend to skip steps. And if you're at an early age, not an early age, but an early skill level an early level in your development, you will listen to people who are saying stuff, but they're not telling you what's really going on because they can't themselves see it. Plus, on top of that, you won't be able to see what they're really doing because you're not good enough to follow what they're doing yet. And so it's a double whammy in terms of, thinking you can learn just by watching a video. In fact, when people tell me, oh, I want to watch a video because I want to learn how the artist does stuff, I've watched so much Kim Jung-gi drawing, but I don't think I learned anything about how to draw from watching Kim Jung-gi draw. All I learned was that he's very good and that the things he's doing are things I need to work on. So for instance, he's visualizing, so I need better visualization skills, but it doesn't mean I can watch him and get his visualization skills. So
that's because you don't have visualization skills.
I guess, but I don't know. Maybe that's just my personal opinion. It could just be that's how I work, but I personally am very skeptical of people saying they learned a lot from just watching someone.
Yeah, because if you
unless
don't
their
do it,
skill level is close, or unless the person that they're watching is also explaining what they're doing and they're a very good teacher. Because if someone's good at explaining what they're doing, they can actually remember what it's like to be a beginner in a way. And you get this from teaching a lot anyway. The more you teach, the more you're confronted with students who are asking questions, and then you learn like, oh, shoot, I'm actually not explaining what I'm doing. And then hopefully you can adjust until you're able to explain things. But just for the person that was commenting that, the only part that matters is the part where you see the artist drawing. It's like, no, I actually disagree. I think them explaining how they're thinking is way more important than whatever they're showing you that's impressive, that you think, oh, now I know it. Now you know what? What do you know now? That they can move their arm and make stuff happen. Like, what are you really getting when you watch someone draw?
Yeah. And it's also helpful for the people that might not be visual learners. Like they get more from hearing people explain things.
True, but in terms of explanations, yeah. But just watching someone draw, it's really like, I think it would be much better for someone who's in that position to just try to draw anyway. Like draw along with it and see if you really think you're learning. Okay, fine. Watch the artist draw. And you think you learned a lot, right? Because that's why you watch the video, because you're learning so much. Okay, try doing it yourself. Because then you're going to run into problems, and then you can rewatch and see, oh, actually, never mind, I wasn't.
Yeah. There's this video on YouTube of this professor talking about how it's like it's not enough to just listen to somebody lecturing and write down notes. It's sort of like you have to go back and be like, well, do you understand it? Can you explain it in the most simplest terms? And for drawing, it'd just be like, okay, you saw this person draw and explain. Can you do it yourself now? And that's sort of an important thing for people to realize is that when you first watch something and you first learn something, it's not that information isn't going down to the deep subconscious part of your brain. It's not going to long-term memory or long-term muscle memory. Long-term memory and muscle memory only happens when you revisit the information or revisit the motion that you're doing over and over and over again. Then it develops into deeper long-term stuff.
Yeah. So pretty much I think that's all the time we have. I hope this was a useful discussion and it helps somehow. And it's not just, oh, you like making graphs and you made a graph.
They are nice graphs. They grow and shrink.
They grow and shrink, exactly. Okay. So I want to go ahead and thank my special guests, Bob Meatbag and Flavia.
Hey.
And thank you for listening or watching, whatever you did to this. And I hope it helped. And thanks for watching.
Yay.
Yeah.